Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen and members. Welcome to our Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee meeting in the committee room here in the Town Hall. If there is a fire and the fire alarm goes, that means it's a real alarm. So please make your way to the foyer over there and follow officers outside of the building to the car park around the side. Excellent. So we'll go to agenda item 1. Apologies for absence and substitution, Mr. Ford.
None received, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2 is minutes of the last meeting, which was held on Tuesday, 28th of May. Can I sign them as a true record? Yeah, thank you. Next item is declaration of interest. Are there any interest that members like to declare now? Or Councillor Fairley?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest and non-registrable interest in item 6 on the agenda, report of Director of Planning A1 TDC response to Norwich statutory consultation electricity power line connection project. The land area to be impacted by proposed cable routes, pylons and substations within the district of Tendring is vast, but my family do own and farmland along these routes. This is the same for wider family members and friends. I've been granted a dispensation under section 33(2)(c) of the Localism Act 2012, allowing me to participate and to vote. The reason for the decision is on the grounds that it is in the interests of persons living in the authority's area for this dispensation to be granted. I am sole ward councillor for Ardleigh and Little Bromley. The council does have an opportunity to voice its residents and businesses' concerns and act in the best interests of the district, and the council will not be the decision maker regarding these proposals.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations? No, can't see any. Thank you. Agenda item 4 is question and notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38. Mr. Ford.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The next item is public speaking. The scheme is within the agenda between page 13 and 16, and I believe we have some public speakers tonight. Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just the one public speaker this evening, and that is Carolyn Mason, Parish Councillor, and she's representing Ardleigh Parish Council.
Would you like to make your way to the microphone? You will have 3 minutes, and someone will give a prompt when there is 30 seconds left. Yes, probably. Over to you, Councillor Mason. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman, for allowing us to come speak this evening. I'm speaking about item 6 and item 8, if I may, as well. First of all, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak. And Ardleigh Parish Council welcomes Tendring District Council's response and endorses its content and objections to the National Grid Norwich Tilbury proposals. The Parish Council will be submitting its own response and hope that councillors and officers will find the time to read it. A draft copy has been published on our Parish Council website for local residents to refer. Considerable time has been spent on the submission, not only by the clerk to the Parish Council, but also the councillors, members of the community and businesses and local groups. And the Parish Council has also engaged our own barrister to advise on the content, particularly mitigation. The Parish Council especially welcomes the recognition that Tendring District Council have given to the considerable harm that will be caused to Ardleigh through the siting of the East Anglian Connection Node, the EACN, in its parish. Not only will the parish have the EACN, but also underground cabling from Lamb Corner to the EACN, and then returning 21 50-metre high pylons that will circle around the village and out to the A12. We would like Tendring District Council to amend document A1 Appendix 1, the statutory consultation response overview, paragraph 3, where you state all the way to the substation in Lawford. We wonder if you can amend that to all the way to the substation in Ardley, because the National Grid substation actually sits in our parish, and we think it's important to recognise that. To quote your document, local impacts for our communities are extensive. The potential cumulative impacts from Norwich to Tilbury and the 2 offshore wind farms will overwhelm communities who will be most affected. And you mentioned the harm to the environment, farming and health, which Ardley Parish Council also submitted in significant detail. We've concluded through consultation with local businesses likely to be affected that there will be significant loss of business and therefore loss of employment. And should National Grid proceed, every consideration should be given to compensating the local economy. Again, to quote your document, currently Tendring is a host authority experiencing disproportionate level of negative impacts, and thus the council should expect a stronger focus on mitigation.
30 seconds left.
So we would like you to recognise the mitigations that we list in our document and take that into account when negotiating with, which we hope we will do with National Grid sometime in the future. And very quickly, I'd like to say thank you so much for all the support that you've given us for our neighbourhood plan, writing our neighbourhood plan, moving on to number 8, and to confirm that we have got a date of the 12th of September. So thank you. And I just wanted to say for other parish councils that are going to undertake a neighbourhood plan, this has taken nearly 5 years to get to this point. So it's not something to think you're going to do very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think you should be given an award for perseverance. Thank you very much indeed. Before we go to the next item, which is A1, the response to the National Grid, are there any comments from officers, or would you like to pick those up when you present the item?
Hello, I'm Eleanor Story. I'm giving the presentation on our response. I just want to say I have looked briefly through the Ardley response and it's excellent. Well done. That's a huge piece of work. And yes, we will make that alteration to Ardley. Apologies. And we will certainly have a look at your mitigations in conversations going forward.
Thank you very much for that. So we now go to agenda item 6, which is A1. The Council response to the National Grid statutory consultation on Norwich to Tilbury electricity power line connection project. This is in Eleanor's hands to present, and I think officers should be thanked for putting such a robust response together and for the time they've given us to work a very good response, and which is consistent again with Essex County Council. And I think you might be giving us a verbal update on their response as well. Okay, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, councillors and members of the public. The first agenda item is to seek your approval on the Tendring District Council response to National Grid statutory consultation on Norwich to Tilbury. Yes. Okay, sorry. Is that better? Okay, good. The full response that we have prepared is available on page 29 of your document pack. I'm now going to present you with an overview of that response. First and foremost, due to the nature and size of this proposal, it qualifies as a nationally significant infrastructure project, NSIP, for which there is a dedicated planning process known as the Development Consent Order. It is administered at national government level by the Planning Inspectorate, PINS, who at the appropriate stage will appoint an individual or team of planning inspectors as the examining authority. The examining authority assess the application and make a recommendation to the relevant Secretary of State whether to grant or refuse consent. The key point is that Tendring District Council is not the determining body for this proposal. Like all other local planning authorities affected by NSIPs, we are a statutory consultee with a right to make representations for or against the proposals. This position is the same for Essex County Council, who are also statutory consultee. There are 6 stages in the development consent order process. These are illustrated on page 20 of your document pack. This proposal is currently at stage 1, pre-application. So why is this happening? Why this application and why now? As part of the wider global response to tackling climate change, the UK has a legislative commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reaching net zero by 2050. Switching from high polluting fossil fuels to renewable energies has a significant role to play. As part of the switch to renewable energy, National Grid are seeking to upgrade the existing electricity transmission infrastructure. The wider project is known nationally as the Great Grid Upgrade. The project itself. Norwich to Tilbury is a controversial proposal that extends, and the clue here is in the title, from Norwich to Tilbury, as shown in map 1 on page 22 of the document pack. Subsequent maps 2 and 3 illustrate how the route heads south from Bramford in Suffolk and then diverts into Tendring to meet the proposed substation known as the East Anglian Connection Node, which is located in the parish of Ardleigh. The map on page 24, map 4 on page 24 zooms in further and shows the proposed underground cabling route through the Dedham Vale National Landscape and feeding into the East Anglian Connection Node. It also shows the overhead pylon route out of the EACN, heading through Ardleigh and west towards Colchester. The location of the substation is intended to provide the main connection point for major offshore wind developments proposed in the North Sea, specifically 5 estuaries and North Falls offshore wind farm. These will make landfall in Tendring and then run underground cables through the district to the EACN if the proposal is granted consent. There is also potential future infrastructure, the Tarcon interconnector. As yet, no proposals have come forward for this. The Council's position. Essex County Council and Tendring District Council have worked closely together throughout the consultation process, which commenced in 2022. And whilst there are different areas of responsibility, both councils are clear that the Norwich to Tilbury proposal should be delivered offshore, overcoming the need for onshore landscape harm and permanent environmental damage. The offshore solution would also negate the need for the East Anglian Connection Node. Essex County Council have prepared an overarching response as well as separate technical responses outlined below. Highways and public rights of way, minerals, waste and planning, arboriculture, ecology, historic environment, built heritage, landscape, green infrastructure, public health, skills and employment. These technical representations, although prepared by ECC, are submitted jointly by County and Tendring. The councils are aligned on all responses. The Tendring District Council response is reflective of the local community concerns. It includes, but is not limited to, much greater consideration must be given to an offshore solution. This has not been thoroughly explored. TDC questions both the timing and the need of the project, with 2 separate independent reports indicating that the existing capacity could extend until 2035, not 2030 as currently indicated. The environmental, ecological and landscape impacts will devastate the local area. The intrusive large-scale industrial infrastructure that is proposed will permanently alter the open rural landscape. The scale of construction and operational traffic would devastate nearby villages. The cumulative impacts of National Grid, Five Estuaries and North Falls centring their onshore industrial infrastructure is causing considerable levels of community anxiety on a plethora of levels. There is not enough detail in the preliminary environmental impact report across all the disciplines and areas of error, which indicates the research is not robust. As mentioned previously, Tendring District Council are not the deciding authority for this proposal. The NSIP application process, page 20 of your pack, is designed to streamline the approval of large infrastructure projects. As such, in our position as a statutory consultee and potential host authority to critical national infrastructure, it is necessary to consider what mitigation measures would be required if the DCO is granted. Tendring District Council supports the government's ambitions to achieve net zero and declared a climate emergency in 2019. The transition to clean energy must ensure that the actions to tackle climate change maximise the benefits and minimise the negative impacts on those most affected. Mitigation would be sought across the project, including but not limited to impacts on highways, landscape and the environment. The transition to clean energy must be fair, inclusive and provide opportunities for all. As such, and without prejudice to our strong objections to the scheme, the Council will seek significant social, economic and community benefits. Social value has particular relevance in tendering, where there is a high danger that the transition to green energy and the positives around it in principle could exacerbate existing deprivation in particular locations, making it socially unjust. To ensure the project delivers social value, Tendring District Council expect to see a significant package of legacy funding commitments, which will fill the gaps in the green energy skills, starting with education, moving up into training and employment, supporting our ambition that allows our workforce to become highly skilled across the renewable sector. We will seek to engage with National Grid on a without prejudice basis as to how they can support our communities. Proposals include: insist on the use of local providers wherever possible, propose investment in the district's strategic cycle infrastructure, particularly along the coast, propose funding measures to assist those residents within agreed proximity to retrofit their homes, and take other measures to help communities achieve greater fuel efficiency on individual properties. Put forward funding proposals for the acquisition or remediation of property in the Freeport area to maximise investment opportunities in the green energy sector and support future local employment. Thank you for your time. I will now hand back to the Chair for any comments, discussion and the recommendation, which is on page 19 of your pack.
Thank you very much indeed, Darren, for your presentation. I will go to members for any comments or any questions. Or are we all happy with what's been presented? Councillor Fairley.
Thank you. More comments than questions. First of all, I would like to say thank you. Thank you very much for the support that you have given throughout this process. When the initial draft of this response came out, I was quite concerned that it wasn't strong enough, but we had meetings about that, and I was really pleased to see what had come back within the agenda. So I'm very happy with this response. I'd also like to point out the amount of work that not just officers at Tendring District Council have done, and councillors as well, but equally Ardleigh Parish Council and Little Bromley Parish Council, who are at the epicentre of this, and the amount of work and effort and knowledge they've had to build in order to create the responses that they are creating has been absolutely amazing. So I would like to, specifically mention Little Bromley and Ardleigh Parish Councils. The work they've done for parish councillors is absolutely amazing, and thank you, Councillor Mason, for coming along tonight. We must continue to strongly object in every way we can and take this further. There are more actions that can be taken for better options than what we have on the table at the moment. So that's where I'm at. But I would like to just, thank you, Chairman, for that, and thank you, officers, for your support. Thank you.
It's on and off. Sorry, there you go. Just support everything said by Councillor Fairley. I think it's clear that we would all prefer a different option to the one that's being put forward at the moment, and I think that the response we're putting in clarifies that and makes that extremely clear. I've read it, and I think at this stage it's an excellent response, and there's not much further we could go. So at this point, if you're looking for someone to propose approval of this, then I'll be happy to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Other comments, members? Councillor Bush.
Yeah, thank you once again, and it was a very, very thorough report and a very comprehensive response to this objection. Regarding recommendations, I'm just looking at recommendation D. We know we're on tight timelines to actually submit this into the statutory consultation 26th July. And it says in recommendation D, it agrees that the approval response as submitted to National Grid be put to full council for further discussion, which is fine, if necessary, and if the outcome of that discussion can be fed back to National Grid. But the next full council will be beyond that date of closure. Does that have any impact to send a letter post the closure of that? That was just really a question technically, really. It added validity.
I'd like to say that, Gary or Ellen.
We are going, we would like to submit on the 26th. We need to do that for it to be acknowledged, but we have had conversations with Grid that have indicated to them that there is a chance we may be putting things afterwards, and they would be unlikely to not consider them, I think is the best way to answer that. But we would want to put this, we need to put this in, and anything additional that came out of that council meeting that wasn't covered in here, we would be able to submit that. We can't guarantee what weight that would have when it was taken by Grid, but it would be received by them.
Yeah, thanks for that, Elena.
I think we also would like, I'd like to understand the additional suggestion by Councillor Mason that I'm happy to leave it to officers to include, but can something be circulated to the committee to highlight whatever additional comments have been made, or do you want to read them out now? I'm happy for you to go away and kind of incorporate them in the body of the report of the response and then circulate them round.
Sorry, Chair, which bit are you referring to? Is that the change of the name?
And also the mitigation, yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely alter the name from, it's incorrectly labelled the Lawford EACN, and we will change that to the Ardley EACN. And yes, we will look at the mitigation packages that Ardley are putting forward, but at this stage, what we have got in the one from tendering, I'm happy to leave that as it is, but going forward, we would certainly take on board the proposals that Ardley have made in any future discussions with Grid.
Okay, and Councillor Chapman, do you want to come in?
Can I just ask, on your response on the last paragraph where you put furthermore, if the development is to go ahead, it's only right that local residents reap. Is there any way that basically, does that need to go into this response straight away, or is it something that could go in a little bit later? Because to me, you're giving them a little chink of hope that we may, accept something if we're going to get these, jobs and training, and I because we're fighting it so hard, I wouldn't want to give them any hope at the moment. And so, is there any way that paragraph can go into stage 2 or something a bit later?
Gary.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I'll pick up on the point that was raised earlier about the parish council suggestions. I think we can quite simply make the alteration to refer to Ardley as the location of the EACN. And in terms of the mitigation, I think our preference would be, in the interest of time and getting portfolio holder sign-off for it to be submitted by the 26th, we would insert a sentence in there guiding National Grid to take seriously the proposals for mitigation that have been put together by the parish council, without going into the specifics of what they are, but to make sure that we've highlighted that that those have been submitted in our response. And rather than recirculate the response, if the committee are happy for us to make those relatively important but minor changes, we can get the response in on time without delay. In terms of the point raised by Councillor Chapman, the difficulty with these NSIP proposals is that we are a body that is a consultee as opposed to the determining body. And you've always got to plan for the possibility that the determining body does resolve to grant permission. And the problem is, because the timetable for these is quite a tight timetable, quite a constrained process, if you don't indicate relatively early on the type of mitigation and the type of community benefit that you would expect to see in the event that the permissions are granted, the later you leave it, you lose the opportunity to make that point. And therefore, and I always describe this as trying to ride 3 horses at the same time. So number 1 horse is that you object in principle, you object strongly, and without prejudice to anything else you suggest later on, the council's position is objection. The second horse you're riding is the one that, if they are going to grant it, how do you mitigate against the impact and the harm? And then the third horse you're riding is, okay, if this is going to go ahead, what are we going to get out of it? Because it is our residents that are affected by it. What is the benefit to tendering residents as a result of a piece of infrastructure that is designed to serve the whole of the country? So as long as we're very clear throughout that our in principle position is that of objection, then my feeling is it's only right to talk about community benefits and mitigation at this stage.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. It's just a general clarification, really. The DCO for National Grid for this application, is it blanket? When I say blanket, in relation to the North Falls and 5 estuaries, or are they going to be separate DCOs? And can that implicate the whole scheme if it failed in timescales? It's just a question I raise because we'd often avoid this part, and are other players in this that actually contribute without the offshore, there will, the ECN becomes irrelevant because there's no connection. So it just, I want to understand how that's working with the DCOs, and because there was not a lot of reference. I know we're dealing directly with this response to National Grid, but what are we doing now with perhaps the others, the other 2, in going forward to sort of strengthen our argument about the our objections to it? Just a question. Thank you.
Gary and Helen.
Yeah, so as you said, Councillor Bush, there are 3 separate DCOs, so that's where it's complicated, because although they are all joined by the EACN, they are completely separate projects. So at the moment, the other 2 that you referenced, North Falls and 5 estuaries, they are further ahead of stage than EACN is, Norwich to Tilbury is. And that is, in fact, one of the strong arguments we are making against them, is that they are premature, because without a substation, they can't make landfall. So there is if this was to go offshore, that would potentially negate the need for the EACN. So yeah, the timings are interesting in terms of the 3 projects at the moment, and that is one of the strong points that's come out from Essex and from tendering, that they're not aligned, and it is in fact that timing's fault that is giving a lot of leverage to object to them.
Thank you. Councillor Fairley.
Thank you. If I could just add to that and Councillor Bush's point, I think it is really, really important to recognise that due to the process of Five Estuaries, North Falls, and then separately National Grid, we must recognise that economic damage is happening in this district now, at this point, not in future when permissions come, but economic damage is happening now. Health impact is happening now. The order of it is just, I can't understand the order of it, but yeah, I have exactly those same concerns, but I think it's just important to recognise that the damage that's happening now because of their processes is.
Okay, so to summarise, we've had a very good discussion on it. You've taken some extra lines to include. We've also got the assurance that there will be some further. Sorry? Yeah. Who's chairman? You've given us the assurance that there will be some, if there is any extra comments to make, there will be sent to National Grid. We've also given you the indication that they will likely to accept it. So that's where we are. Before I go to Councillor Baker for final comment, I'd just like to urge everyone, consultation closes on 26. I submitted mine yesterday, so please feel free to cut and paste from this, from the Essex one, especially from the Ardley one, which is an absolute masterpiece of submission, and just a mixture of all three, and send it off to Miss Katrina Owens, a very popular lady at the moment. Councillor Baker, any comments from you?
Thank you, Chairman. Not many. I think it's an excellent response. Obviously, it's been worked on. There's been drafts. I saw the very first one, and I think just we need to bolster it up. This puts us where our position is no. We don't want it. We object to it. I think in my short period of time in politics, if you like, I have never known that so many people across 3 counties with MPs, county councillors, district councillors, parish councillors have all objected. So that is a huge, huge indication to National Grid that this is wrong. You haven't considered any other option. You've taken something that is old. I mean, pylons, how long have they been about? A little bit, 100 years or something. You're using old technology when we're advancing greatly, and it appears it's all on a cost to me. That's a personal view. So I've listened to your debate, some excellent comments. The officers have worked very hard to get here. I'm so glad that Ardley, Little Bromley have put in their responses, and we will consider and look at the mitigation that they will be requesting should unfortunately this actually be granted. And like you say, Councillor Guglielmi, if you haven't submitted an objection, you've got 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, including the extra comments, please show. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, indeed, members. Okay, you're very welcome to stay, or thanks so much. Thank you. Good night. The next item is agenda item 7A2, which is the updated housing supply position and the local plan review baseline. I will go straight to officers who will guide us through the current position. I think that's you, Paul, that's going to present it. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. The purpose of the report is twofold this evening. Firstly, it's to report the findings of this year's Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment, which is the SHLA, and that includes the number of new homes built in the financial year 2023 to 24, the updated year-by-year trajectory for future house building in the district, and the 5-year land supply position. And secondly, to report the baseline housing position for the review of the local plan. So starting with the SHLA, it's a document that serves two purposes. It's a key part of the evidence that supports the preparation of a local plan, and it's also useful for determining planning applications and defending planning appeals. The document itself is 82 pages long, and it's an A3 format due to the large tables it contains, and so it's linked as a background document rather than being included as part of your agenda pack this evening. But the key findings themselves are set out in the report. The adopted housing requirement in the current local plan is 550 homes a year, which works out at a total of 11,000 homes across the period 2013 to 2033, which we call the plan period. In the year April 23 to March 24, the net number of new homes, which is housing completions minus losses, such as demolitions and conversions, was 838, which means the district's annual housing need has been exceeded for the 8th year in a row. Of these 838 dwellings, 715 took place on large development sites, that's sites of 10 or more dwellings, and 123 completions took place on smaller sites of 9 or fewer. On page 44 of your agenda, the housing trajectory shows the number of new homes we currently expect to be delivered over the coming years. This year, the trajectory has an additional 8 years compared to previous versions you'll have seen, which covers the extended local plan period, and I'll explain those columns in a moment. But the familiar parts of the trajectory are the blue columns on the left, which show actual delivery year on year from 2013, and the yellow columns, which show our predicted delivery for the years between now and 2033, which is the adopted local plan period. The trajectory is calculated by looking at each large development site, 10 or more dwellings, that has planning permission or is a local plan allocation, and establishing how quickly homes will be delivered on those sites. We look at past performance in different parts of the district, and we speak to the developers to understand how well their individual sites are performing. Currently, we expect strong delivery over the next 4 years, which is going to dip slightly in years 5 and 6, and then reduce further in the latter part of the plan period. When the National Planning Policy Framework was updated in December last year, the requirement for us to demonstrate an ongoing 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites was removed in certain circumstances. And in particular, when a council has an up-to-date local plan that was adopted less than 5 years ago, and which identified a 5-year supply of specific deliverable sites. Nevertheless, officers have retained the 5-year supply calculation in the SHLA because it's a natural output from the study, which demonstrates that tendering is well placed to meet the district's housing need over the coming years. That calculation for the 5-year supply is set out on pages 46 and 47 of the agenda. It starts by establishing the requirement for the current 5 years and applying the relevant buffer in accordance with the NPPF. So for tendering with a 5% buffer, this number is 2,888 homes over 5 years. Calculation then sets out the anticipated supply of new homes, 3,158 from large sites with planning permission, none from local plan allocations because these can't be included in the calculation until they have planning permission, and 456 from smaller sites and windfall development. So in total, that gives 3,614 new homes, which is more than 125% of the 5-year requirement, and that translates into a 6.26 year supply. What we don't know at this stage is what changes the new government might make to the NPPF, but there has been a suggestion that the requirement to demonstrate an ongoing 5-year supply might be reinstated. And so having that calculation as part of our current SHLA will put us in a good situation if that change were to come about. The information set out in this year's SHLA will form the baseline data for the review of our local plan, setting out how many homes we currently expect to be delivered from large sites with planning permission, local plan allocations, and small sites. And this in turn will help us understand how much additional land we might need to plan for in order to update and extend the local plan to cover the period to 2041. When the adopted local plan was being prepared, the council was required to calculate an objectively assessed housing need. This calculation was the subject of significant scrutiny when the local plan was examined, and a number of objectors argued that the figure should have been higher than 550. But because of uncertainty around the census demographic data at the time, and an issue that was referred to as unattributable population change, the council was able to demonstrate to the inspector, with the support of our expert demographics consultants, that 550 was a sound housing requirement for that local plan. However, the National Planning Policy Framework now requires councils to use the standard method for calculating their housing need, and this method is set out in detail in National Planning Practice Guidance. Part of that calculation is a cap, which seeks to limit any increase in housing needs to 40% above the currently adopted figure. And what this means is, although the natural output of the standard method for our district may well be higher, under the current guidance, it will be capped at 770 dwellings per annum. And it's that figure that we show on the chart on page 44 of your agenda as a red dotted line. And it illustrates what the housing requirement may be from 2026, 5 years from the adoption of our current local plan. This figure is something that officers are keeping under review at this stage, and we're again taking advice from our demographics consultants to make sure that the local plan review is going to be based on the correct housing requirement. And it is important to acknowledge that the new government have made a number of announcements indicating their intention to increase house building and to reintroduce mandatory housing targets. But it's currently not clear to what extent national planning policy may change, when those changes may take effect, or what impact they will have on the local plan review. And so the council needs to proceed at this time with the review of the local plan in accordance with current national policy. But officers will keep that situation under very close review. So to establish the baseline position for the local plan review, we need to understand two things: the number of new homes needed in the local plan period, which will run from 2024 to 2041, and the number of new homes we already expect to be delivered. The current local plan housing requirement will remain valid until 5 years from its adoption, which means for the years 2024 to 26, we'll use 550 dwellings a year. For the following 15 years, 2026 to 41, if we use the capped standard method figure of 770, that gives a total requirement in the region of 12,650 dwellings. And then secondly, the number of new homes we've already planned for. This number comes from three sources, which are set out in the table on page 48 of your agenda, and it's informed by the appendices within the SHLA itself. The existing local plan allocations give us 4,168. Large sites with planning permission give us 4,665. And a projection of how many small windfall sites might come forward gives another 806 new homes. That's a total of 9,639 new dwellings between now and 2041, before we've allocated any additional land. These numbers are reflected on the graph back on page 44, where we've detailed prediction of what will be delivered year on year between now and 2033 in the yellow columns, and then an annualized average figure of 420 dwellings a year from 2033 to 41, shown in purple. Later in the process of reviewing the local plan, it will be necessary to make a more detailed prediction about specific years in the latter part of the plan period. But for now, we've worked out how many homes might realistically be delivered between 33 and 41, and then divided that figure by 8 to give an indication of the gap between what we've currently planned for and what we may need to plan for under the standard method. And what that indicates is that we may need to allocate land for something in the order of 3,000 to 4,000 new homes as part of the local plan review. The final part of the report, which is set out on page 49, looks at small sites. This is a new requirement under the NPPF, which expects councils to meet at least 10% of their housing requirement on smaller sites, sites less than 1 hectare in size. This presents a unique set of challenges because delivering comprehensive infrastructure for piecemeal development like this can be much more difficult, and it will potentially mean identifying and allocating a considerably greater number of sites. And so as part of establishing the baseline position for the local plan review, we've looked at the number of small sites that we currently have in the pipeline. 2 sites that are allocated in the current local plan, 17 sites that already have planning permission, and our windfall projection, which is for developments of 9 or fewer dwellings, which gives another 806. This means that if our total housing requirement for the updated local plan is 12,650, we've already identified land for 9.5% of that requirement on smaller sites, which puts us in a comfortable position to satisfy that part of the NPPF as part of our local plan review. So I'd like to hand back to the chairman for the recommendation, which can be found on page 39.
Paul, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. Very comprehensive and logical. Members of Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. You knew I'd probably comment on this one. I was quite involved in the 550 a long time ago, and that seems to have worked very well. What concerns me at the moment is it feels to me that we're a little bit in limbo. What I mean by that is we've got lots of figures moving forward, but we are now aware that targets are about to be introduced by government. The word target never suggests to me that it's going to go down. Usually suggests that it's going to go up. So what is the situation? How can we project until we really know what those targets are going to be? And we clearly don't yet.
Would you respond to that?
Thank you, Chairman. It's a very good question. And it's a difficult situation to be reviewing a local planning because, as we've explained at previous meetings, we've got a very tight timeline in which to prepare this local plan review. And as the national policy currently stands, we do need to submit our updated local plan by June next year. And so we don't have the luxury to be able to wait and see what changes the new government might make to housing requirements, whether they do introduce targets and what they might be. And so at this stage, we need to proceed on the basis of current national policy. And if the situation does change and we're required to calculate our housing need in a different way, then we will need to look very carefully at what our options are to meet that need.
Do you want to come back?
Yeah, just very quickly. I mean, looking at the chart, there's a potential there that will go to 770. In fact, it almost certainly will. I think that's true. And looking at the chart, it seems we're going to fall way short of that. So I think there's a great deal of concern there that if the number goes higher, and as I say, the word targets suggests to me up rather than down, I'm really not sure how we're going to get there. So it feels like you've got a fair old job on over there. Yeah, thanks, Jim.
I think the comment is let's crack on with it, really. Any other? Councillor Fairley.
Yes, just a couple of comments. It's a shame you can't even out the numbers, isn't it? Because where we've over-delivered as like, if you like, if they can't be banked in some way, you know, just as a thought. I think so. Once this is all prepared and our local plan goes in, so there's just a question. So once it's been done and approved, is that not it? Whatever changes are made at government level, or can they sort of change that? And actually, when you're thinking then about the work that parish councils have put into neighbourhood plans and things, how does that impact? And it might not relate directly to what we're looking at today, but it was just a couple of questions that came to mind. Thank you.
Paul, just respond.
When we've seen planning reforms and changes to the planning system in the past, there has often been a transitional arrangement. So that was the case with the local plan that was adopted in 2021. Because of when it was submitted, it was examined under the arrangements that were in place at that time, despite then subsequent changes to national planning policy. At this stage, we don't know whether that will be the approach that the new government takes, but it would seem a sensible approach. If, like the previous government, their expectation is that council will have a local plan in place to facilitate development, then putting in a policy that would actually slow down the preparation of a local plan or mean that we had to go back to the drawing board would seem counterproductive. So I would expect to see some kind of transitional arrangement, but how that works and what the practicalities are, it's very difficult to say at this stage.
Thank you. Yeah, just on neighbourhood plans you didn't mention, but I'm presuming they, you know, it could be anything. But I think it would be an absolutely dreadful thing if all the work that parish councils had put into doing neighbourhood plans was just wiped over. I would like to think that that wouldn't happen. But if there are any changes, I guess that you know you will keep this committee and councillors advised.
Just briefly, that there's been a lot of talk about increasing housing delivery. I've not heard anything along the lines of removing neighbourhood plans, and certainly ones that are in force. I've not seen anything that would suggest that they are going to be revoked. And so I think, you know, the neighbourhood plans have their own review periods built into them, but I've not seen anything that suggests that the system around neighbourhood planning is going to change significantly in the short term.
Bush.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. first and foremost, Paul, thank you for that report. I always find it so interesting to look at this data of where we are, where we need to be. You don't carry a crystal ball in that bag, do you, for the next plan, do you? No, the point I want to make really is that don't underestimate the work. It took us a long while to get to the last adopted plan, and already we're thinking ahead. We're trying to future-proof best we can with a lot of unknowns, and I really commend the work that's gone into this. You know, when we're looking forward, we don't know what's going to come out the woodwork long term in terms of housing supply. We know what the baselines are. We know where we are, and as long as we keep ahead in that curve in a forward part, I think it's a great job, and I really like to commend all the team involved with this, because we've got something that we know we are, and we're not looking back, we're looking forward. And thank you once again for that.
Don't see, Councillor Chapman.
I'm just going to pick up on something that Councillor Fairley said. At the last meeting, I think it was, we mentioned that we've gone over our development numbers and that we couldn't carry them over to take them off for the following year or anything. And I'm sure you said that that was being asked about in government or something. Has there been any update on that?
No, what the answer is, Paul.
No, it was one of the proposals that was part of the last government's planning reforms, and there were a series of consultations where they asked local authorities, the house building industry, and members of the public for their views on those different proposals as part of the reforms. But that is one of the proposals that wasn't met favourably, particularly from the house building industry, as you can imagine, and it wasn't carried forward into the Levelling Up Regeneration Act and the proposals for new style local plans. I haven't heard anything to suggest that it's on the radar with the new government, and certainly the noises that are being made about accelerating housing delivery would suggest they wouldn't want to introduce something that would slow that down. But we can hope, because over the last few years we have delivered very, very strongly with our housing delivery in the district, and it would make sense that we would incorporate that going forward. But as it currently stands, that's not part of the system, unfortunately.
We come back.
No, just thank you, but I think it's everything that we expected the answer was going to be, and that we were just hoping. But thanks for that.
I think we are in a very strong position, because the way I'm saying that there might be some announcement at the end of the summer in September, and taking into consideration the consultation time to push through the changes, hopefully it'll get us to the where we want to go, but to submit by June. Before I go to the vote, Councillor Baker, any comments from you?
Just one really. I feel sorry for our planners, because wouldn't it be nice to just have a period of time where there was some stability and we knew exactly what was going to happen in 6 months' time, rather than office having to go, well, we're not sure what's going to happen because it could change tomorrow, and it just puts work back. All the very, very hard work that gets done by a relatively small team, I think is highly commendable, highly commendable. I just wish we had some stability, you know, from whichever government we had or have, you know, just leave us alone and let's get on with it. Thank you, Chair.
Can I agree with you more? Okay, the recommendation has not been moved or seconded. It's Councillor Fairley move it and Councillor Bray second it. Has been duly proposed and seconded. I go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. No changes. That's unanimous again. Thank you very much indeed. The next item is in the hands of Will Fuller, which will go through the updated local development scheme and really the changes that have had to be made as a result of a certain election being called. So over to you, Will.
at some point I'll get it on. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Yes, the LDS, or Local Development Scheme, is a document that the Council needs to prepare, and what it basically does is set the timetable out for planning documents. So that's not only things like the development plan document that supports the garden community, but also neighbourhood plans, and more importantly, I suppose, the local plan itself. Everybody in this room, I suppose, will be aware that an election has taken place. What that also meant was that before that election took place, there was a time of more careful consideration by councils, where we had to really carefully think about what we were publishing and what we were consulting on, and so that meant that we couldn't consult on a number of subjects that had potentially politically motivated issues attached. So that meant that our local plan had been pushed back from the dates that members have already seen, because this document has been before members in February of this year. So you've kind of already seen what's before you. The real headlines, I suppose, for the local plan are that where we were going to submit the issues and options document in spring or summer, that's definitely now more likely to be summer. The preferred options document, which was going to be autumn winter, is now definitely going to be winter, and the publication draft plan, which was likely to be spring, is now going to be spring or summer. They're the only parts of the plan preparation that really kind of changed, because we've kind of allowed ourselves a tiny, teeny bit of wiggle room, and so that does mean that we are still on track to submit the plan to the examiner in summer next year. As well as giving the new potential dates for the local plan. Because we're updating the LDS at this time as well, we were also able to give an update, a real fact check on where we are with the neighbourhood plans that are going through. So now there's now amended dates for where they're likely to go to referendum, which is very soon, and then also it comments on the garden community project, the DPD for that, which it did say examination is likely to take place, and now that obviously has happened. So just those bits. I've tried to be a bit helpful here, and actually in the LDS document itself, which actually starts on page 55, I've highlighted in yellow the changes that are made, and they are very few and far between. So you can actually see what's actually happened there. That's kind of about it, really. It is a very light touch report, so I'm hoping this is just going to be a bit of a nod and a smile. But over to the chairman there for the recommendation that's on page 51.
Well, thank you very much indeed. There's 4 pages where there's yellow track changes on that. 55, 59, 62 and someone like to move the recommendation that we approve for the publishing? Councillor Scott and Councillor Chapman. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. I don't think you had any comments to make, the Councillor Bakers. Excellent. That takes us to the end of the agenda. Members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your attendance, and have a very nice rest of the summer. The summer has only just begun with the children, and we'll see you back in the autumn. Thank you very much indeed.